Happy Friday. Happy Thursday, everybody. It feels like a Friday for me because I'm taking a little bit of time off tomorrow. I will be in the shop in the morning, but not in the afternoon. Hey, happy Thursday. And welcome to my weekly live chat here at Mary's Heirloom Seeds on YouTube. If you are just joining me for the first time, welcome. For those of you that join me regularly, welcome back. Let me just see here, make sure I'm not missing anybody. All right. Hi. Can you see me all right? Am I clear? I'm out in the garden once again, and sometimes we get great coverage and sometimes it's a little on the spotty coverage. So hello and thank you for joining me. I'm Mary, for those of you that don't know, from Mary's Heirloom Seeds, and tonight we've got some garden questions and answers to share with you. If you have questions, feel free to ask them. Hey, Serial Spinner, thank you so much for your feedback. So I've got a couple of announcements to share first with you before we get to the questions and answers portion of our video. In the description section of this video, you will find lots of awesome information. If you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel. Hit the thumbs up for this video so everybody knows that you're here and hanging out with me tonight. You will also find in the description section of this video, you will find links to my comprehensive planting guide. I mention that just about every week when I'm live here. You will also find a link to my anniversary announcement that I shared on the 1st. Hey, Krista, thanks for joining me. So we have an anniversary in May. It's super exciting. I love it. We're celebrating 12 years. Hey, Kim G, thanks for joining me. Nice to see you all as well today. So we are celebrating our 12-year anniversary at Mary's Heirloom Seeds. We have a seed giveaway in the form of a video that's going on right now through the 7th. We have a seed sale that's going on throughout the entire month of May. We have 2 discount codes. One ends on the 10th and one is good for the whole month. And then if you sign up for my e-newsletter, which the link is in there as well, Asia Joe says, congratulations. Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm also going to do a giveaway on my website. I always share those on Mary's blog at marysheirloomseeds.com. And then I do a couple of Facebook, hey, what's this seed? And then the first person that guesses it correctly, I send you out that seed. If you're not on Facebook, not that big of a deal. Hey, Lizelle, I believe I'm pronouncing that right. Welcome from San Diego, or from Southern California. We're in East Texas today. It was been a crazy day today, so I'm a little befuddled. So every week I do a garden Q&A, and sometimes I have a specific topic. So while I'm chatting with you today, you're more than welcome to ask me some questions. If I miss your question, I apologize. Sometimes the comments and questions go pretty quickly. If I miss it, it was unintentional. You can always send an email to mary@marysheirloomseeds.com. That's my personal email, and I will get back to you as quickly as possible. Super excited for this beautiful day. It's a little overcast right now. It's hot, warm, but it's super cloudy, so it doesn't feel as hot as it actually is. But there's all kinds of critters flying around and hanging out with me in the garden today. So my topic today that I didn't mention in the subject of the video is succession planting and crop rotation. So those kind of go hand in hand. Sometimes they don't, sometimes they do. It really just depends on your type of growing. So if you are looking to plant something else, hey, thank you. If you are planting things like lettuce, and maybe you don't want to harvest all of the lettuce all at one time, you can do succession planting. Now, succession planting is basically just staggering your planting so that you have a longer harvest or a longer growing season, specifically for that crop. So I'll give you an example. We've got some spinach behind me. We've got some cilantro behind me. So if I don't want to harvest all of that cilantro all at one time, I can plant a couple rows of cilantro and then something else. And then maybe 2 or 3 weeks later, I'll plant some more cilantro. Because, I mean, not everybody likes cilantro, so that might be a poor option for you. Some people don't like cilantro. They say it tastes like soap. I love cilantro. And then like peas. So I've got some snow peas back here, and maybe I don't want to harvest all of my snow peas all at one time. So you would stagger your planting for succession planting. Or probably the really good one would be beets. Not everybody wants to harvest 100 beets all at one time. So if you stagger your planting using succession planting, you don't have 100 beets all at one time. Which, fun fact, I shared in my email this week, and if you're not signed up for my emails, you are missing out on some amazing stuff. Beet seeds and Swiss chard seeds are actually a cluster of seeds all in one. So if you get a pack of seeds at Mary's Heirloom Seeds and it says 100 seeds, I would be willing to guarantee that there's more than 100 seeds in there in the first place if you actually counted, because we do like to put a lot more seeds than what's on the package. But each one of those seeds might be a cluster of more than one seeds. So that $2 seed pack of beets that says it's 100, you might be getting 200 or more beets from that single pack, which is pretty awesome, right? So that was a fun fact I shared in my email, was beet seeds and Swiss chard seeds in particular. They look very similar. They're in the same family, but the seeds themselves look very similar, and it's a cluster of seeds, so you might get more than one. Pretty awesome, right? So succession planting, as I mentioned, is just essentially staggering your planting so that you can harvest continually throughout the season or throughout the season of that crop. Keep in mind that some things like cilantro over here, it's going to bolt when it gets too hot. So a season for cilantro might be a couple of months instead of the whole growing season. Just depends on where you are and what the weather's like. And then you have crop rotation. So crop rotation is different. Crop rotation is just simply moving your crops around so that you're not planting the same thing in the bed every year or every season. So in this bed here, last year, I had cucumbers on the back instead of peas. So peas and beans are both in the same family, so you don't necessarily want to plant peas and beans right afterwards. You can, it's not that big of a deal, but it's just an option if you want to practice crop rotation. A really important part of crop rotation is hopefully deterring pests, because say you had issues with one pest last year, and say squash, for example, and you had the squash bugs in this bed. So you want to rotate your crops so that maybe you don't have the same issue. Maybe you had powdery mildew, so you don't really want to plant the same crop that might be susceptible to that same pest or disease. Krista says, what do you recommend for where I now have garlic? I'm going to get to that as well. Since Krista asked me about garlic, that is an excellent question. Garlic should not be planted in the same place every single year, because the same disease that might be in the soil that might not affect your first crop, but maybe it would affect your second crop. You definitely want to practice crop rotation. So very good question. Now, since garlic isn't normally harvested until July, you want to plant something that is probably heat tolerant, right? Because I don't know about you, but I do know, Krista, you're kind of in our area. East Texas in July is hot. I got a video from when we first moved here, and it was like, it's hot, because it really is hot in East Texas here. So there's a couple things you can plant that would do really well in that area. Now, keep in mind that garlic is a heavy feeder, so you're going to want to replenish some of your soil afterwards. But cowpeas are excellent choice. Heat tolerant beans would be a good choice. Cowpeas are just such an excellent choice in the first place. Sorry. My brain is fried today, apparently. I keep saying some random stuff. Squash. Heat tolerant squash, not spinach. Spinach is not heat tolerant at all. There are some that are more heat tolerant, like Malabar spinach, but that's not really the same, and it's a vining option. Pumpkin would be a good one. So something that would be heat tolerant, and then that's not an onion. Garlic is in the same family as like an onion, so you don't want to plant an onion in that same place. You want something that's going to be heat tolerant. Some onions are heat tolerant, but like I said, you don't want to plant an onion because it's in the same family as your garlic. So I hope that answered your question. And I'm going to get to, I will have a more in-depth crop rotation article at a later time, but I kind of wanted to introduce this to you since some of you are harvesting right now and then you've got some empty spaces. Some of you are just getting started planting, depending on where you're located. So that might be something to consider, is crop rotation and succession planting. So like I mentioned, large groups of the same crops will, you're welcome, can attract the same pests. So that's a really important reason why we practice crop rotation. And then also soil nutrients are depleted when you are planting the same crop. So I did mention don't plant onions, but I also mentioned that garlic can be a heavy feeder, so you are going to want to add something to it. Cowpeas, like I mentioned earlier, they aren't as heavy of a feeder as, say, squash, and they can actually replenish the nutrients in your soil if you till them under once they're done. Cowpeas are considered a cover crop. So even if you're not eating the cowpeas, it is a fantastic crop to grow as well. So if you are planting the same thing in one area, so for this bed, for example, I'm not going to plant all squash in this bed. I'm going to plant squash. I'm going to plant tomatoes. I'm going to plant peppers. I am a big fan of having multiple things in my bed. So multiple varieties. So I've got some spinach, I've got some kale, I've got some cilantro, I've got some lettuce, I've got peas behind me, and I have this giant, beautiful basil plant. So you can plant a lot of different things in a small space. So that's why I mentioned before that succession planting and crop rotation kind of go hand in hand. So once the spinach is done, I'll be able to plant something else. And now I'm going to get into a couple of specifics. So if you haven't already, please hit the thumbs up for our video. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And I'll say it again because it's super exciting. We have a seed giveaway. In the last video I posted, it was not a live video. I actually filmed it and posted it almost immediately because I was so excited. We have a seed giveaway, and all you have to do is follow the instructions in the video. So please check out my anniversary giveaway announcement in a YouTube video. And then also in the description section, you'll find the official announcement that I sent out. It's got seed sales, discount codes, and a couple giveaway options as well. So let's talk about specific ways that you can practice crop rotation. So beans, for example. When my jade bush bean is done, it isn't a crop that's going to continue to harvest throughout the whole growing season or throughout the whole year. I'm only going to get a short period of time that it's going to produce a bunch of jade beans, and then the plant is done. So what can I plant in place of beans? I mentioned earlier, I don't want to plant peas because they're in the same family, but I can plant things like tomatoes, carrots, onions, even broccoli. Again, depending on what time of the year. Once my jade bush beans are done in a month from now or 2 months from now, I'm definitely not going to be planting broccoli because that's going to be, again, June or July, and I definitely am not going to be planting broccoli in East Texas. So consider the season that you are planting in as well as what you're removing. So it's not an easy thing to figure out, but it can be easy. I try not to make it too complicated, right? Radish is another example. I've got watermelon radish, a bunch of watermelon radish I planted. So we'll use that as an example. When my radish is done and I pull it out, I eat the leaves and I eat the actual root. What am I going to grow? I'm not going to plant more radish. That would be succession planting if I were staggering my planting. But I want to plant something that is not a root crop. Hey, Ken, thanks for joining us. That is, I can plant something that's a heavy feeder in that area because radishes are not a heavy feeder. So in that case, I'm going to plant tomatoes or peppers or squash. I could plant some more beans in that area if I wanted to. So again, it depends on the region and what I'm actually going to plant in that area in the same bed. So I had to say, okay, well, where I have my radishes planted, what do I already have? Well, I've got squash, I've got okra, I've got beets. The beets are going to come out as well, so I've got to plan for something else to plant in there. There's lots of moving parts here in a raised bed. Well, I'm giving you an example as a raised bed. You might be growing in ground, so you can kind of use the same principles apply. I can plant eggplant in that area because that's a heavy feeder. So there's a couple things that I can plant in that area that would do really well. I also want to say, hey, what pests were in that garden bed that maybe I can combat with a companion plant? So right now I was just looking at my radishes before I left, and there's some beetles in there. So there's a couple things that I can plant that might deter the beetles so that I won't continue that cycle of the pest in that raised bed. So I can plant some catnip in there. That is a really good one, I believe, to deter some of the beetles. I can plant some nasturtiums in there. Sorry, I keep looking at it because it inspires me to actually look at the bed. I don't know if it helps for you. I'm a very visual person, so I do like being able to see it. And I'm very, I just want to see it and feel it and get an idea for what I'm doing. Asia Joe says, new gardener, didn't really think about planting a second crop after one was done. Thanks for going over this. You're very welcome. I realize that there's a lot of different topics that I haven't covered that I will be covering soon. And now is the time where people are planting or transplanting, and it's a great idea to consider what you're growing now or what you will be planting now, and then think about the future. What are you going to plant in that bed or that area of your garden, that container? This crop rotation can also be used in container gardening. It doesn't specifically have to be in ground or raised beds, because I've got in ground over there and I've got raised beds behind me in this bed, and then, or in this fenced in garden, and I've got containers over here as well. So there's a lot going on in here. Again, moving parts that I am planning for the next crop. And I know some of you haven't planted yet, and I'm sorry, but hopefully you get to digging in the soil pretty soon. So radish was another one I mentioned. Beans are another one. Peas. I did mention this one already. So behind me, I have peas. These peas are not going to be growing for the entire season. Why? Because peas, garden peas, snap peas, snow peas, these are a cool season crop. So they are producing right now, but once it gets hot, I will not be growing garden peas. Lana says you could also interplant with native flowers to attract more pollinators, as well as predator insects to balance the plant-eating insects. Absolutely. So I did mention something like nasturtium that you could do, and I actually do have a lot of native flowers, but I'm growing a lot of natives along the outer edge on the inside of this garden. You don't see it, sorry, because you're just kind of seeing what's directly behind me. But this is a fenced-in garden here, specifically to keep out deer and hogs, because I do have a lot growing in here, and that's what our major wildlife that might come running through here. Rabbits, I haven't had as many rabbits this year since we're doing raised beds. They're eating over there instead. So yes, you could definitely plant some flowers and some herbs. I mentioned catnip is a really good one. Cilantro wouldn't necessarily be a good summer one, but there's a couple things you can do. Basil will definitely be planted in some of the beds. They are growing right now. And there's a couple things that I've got, like I mentioned, that are all growing on the outside of the garden to attract pollinators into the garden, just not in my raised bed. No More says, hi Mary, I just want to say how happy I am with the seeds. Oh yay, you purchased. I have had nearly 100% germination. Thank you for the quality seeds. You are very welcome. Thank you so much for the awesome feedback. I appreciate it. So there are a lot of things that you can do that, like I said, with the moving parts. So if you have questions, you can always reach out to me. But I do like to do the Q&A sessions here on our live chats because there's so many questions that people have that might benefit other people as well. So I received a message from one of my customers, and she asked me about the seeds. She said, am I just going crazy, Mary, or is it possible that I planted 1 Swiss chard seed and 2 popped up? Because I have 2 seedlings. And yes, the answer to that was absolutely, those seeds can produce multiples. And then somebody says, well, what about tomatoes? And no, 1 tomato is 1 plant. However, sometimes those teeny seeds get stuck together because they have a gelatinous covering on them when they come out of the tomato that you in order to clean it, we essentially soak it in water and allow that gelatinous material to rot. It ferments, and then you kind of slide it off, and then it's clear. So sometimes 2 tomato seeds get stuck together. But what about cilantro? In cilantro, there's 2 seeds in one, because if you squished a cilantro seed in half, sometimes it'll pop open and there's a seed on either side, which is kind of cool. So I kind of share a lot of random seed information and random garden information, but I do try to help. Christian says, what the Magnificent Mary said. I concur. Happy Thursday. Thank you, Christian. I always appreciate you stopping by and sharing. So there is a lot of great information. Now, in the description section of this video, as I mentioned earlier, is the, hey, Hog Legs, thanks for joining us. Some more locals here from East Texas. So there is a comprehensive planting guide, tons of useful information in there. When my article comes out on crop rotation, I will share that in it. So I have been updating, easily distracted by wildlife apparently. As I add more tutorials and videos, I will be adding them to our updated comprehensive planting guide. So there's so much information. There's more information today than there was in January, and there's more information in January than there was last year. So instead of creating a new a new planting guide, I've just added to it. So it's growing bigger and bigger every day. Like I mentioned also, we've got a seed sale. You'll find the link for our anniversary seed sale there as well. And if I didn't answer your question, or if you're watching this and it's not live, you can always send me an email to mary@marysheirloomseeds.com, and I will try to answer. Hogles says fantastic guide. So I hope you enjoyed this short and sweet video about succession planting and crop rotation. I do try to make things simple. I do try not to make you look at it and go, oh my gosh, this is way too confusing, I'm just gonna throw in the towel and give up. Because as one of my amazing friends, Kaylin, she was 9 years old when I interviewed her. She's now 13. She said, I said, what is one word of advice you could give to people watching or listening to your interview? And she said, never give up. And that has stuck with me for so long, 4 years since I interviewed her. At such a young age, she had such a passion for growing and not giving up. Because every year in the garden, we have what might be considered failures, and some people call it a failure. But I always look at it as an opportunity to learn, something new, and maybe change it next year, maybe alter it just a little bit, maybe tweak it just a little bit, and then have bigger successes every year, because no one year in the garden is the same. And hopefully, if you are reading this or watching this for your first time, you get some inspiration and you never give up. And you learn something new every year, and your garden flourishes more and more every year. Alrighty, everybody. I am Mary from Mary's Heirloom Seeds, signing off, and happy planting.